What is going on, YouTube? Welcome back to Fireside Rangers. I'm your host, Eric Wilson. Today, joined by my co-host, Will Cohen. We've got an early morning episode for you guys here today because last night, just as I was getting ready to go to bed, the Rangers go and acquire JT Miller. He's back in New York, but I feel like this trade was almost inevitable. We've been talking about it for so long. There was a trade that almost went through and then was canceled last second. But the day is here. JT Miller is back with the New York Rangers. So we're going to break down this trade, give our thoughts and reactions on it. So before we get into that, make sure you guys like, subscribe, ring that bell to miss notification, leave your thoughts on this trade down in that comment section below, and be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms at Fireside Rangers. But here we go. I think the first thing we need to do is just state what the trade is. Clearly, as I've said a few times already in under a minute, the Rangers have acquired JT Miller from the Vancouver Canucks, but that's not all they acquired. They also got two prospects in this trade, Eric Brandstrom and Jackson Dorrington, both defensemen. Brandstrom is a former first rounder. He was drafted by Vegas. He was the main piece that got moved to Ottawa in the Mark Stone trade a couple years ago. And after a couple years, he ends up in Vancouver. Was supposed to be really good, didn't really pan out. But who knows, maybe a change of scenery in New York can do something for him. But given our track record with developing prospects, he might be cooked. The other prospect we got was Jackson Dorrington, another defenseman. He plays at Northeastern, and he's a former sixth-round pick. Maybe he sneaks his way into the NHL one day. But to me, I think the main piece of the prospects is going to be Brandstrom, seeing if he can pan out. I also just want to point out that there was zero salary retained on the JT Miller contract. So we are taking on that full $8 million cap hit, which I'm sure we're going to get into at some point. In return, the Rangers did have to give up Chytil. We'll talk about that a little bit too. I'm going to miss you, Phil. We also had to give up Victor Mancini and a 2025 first-round pick. That is top 13 protected. So if the Rangers end up missing the playoffs and in their first rounder this year ends up being in the top 13 picks, they get to keep it, and the pick that goes to Vancouver is going to shift to a 2026 pick. So those are the details of the trade. I'm just going to start by giving my opinion. I don't love it and I don't hate it. I think it's a good trade. This is a trade for a team that is trying to make the playoffs. And adding JT Miller, who scored 103 points last year, is going to help the Rangers make that playoff push. We're only a few points out of this playoff spot right now. We have a game against Boston in a few hours, so that's a crucial game that Miller is going to be making his second NYR debut in. But I don't want to get into any standings.
He's expected to make it. We don't know if he is. That's what Emily Kaplan said.
We'll see. He's expected to play. We'll see if he does. Point is, I don't want to get into the stats with the numbers and the standings because that's going to change in like 4 hours. So point is, this is a trade that the Rangers are making to try to make that playoff push. If we make the playoffs and Miller continues to succeed with the Rangers and go on another 100-point campaign, obviously this trade is a win. You know, having a 100-point player, 200-point players now because you also have Panarin on a playoff team really helps your chances of winning the Stanley Cup. But if we don't make the playoffs, this is going to look so bad because then, one, we don't have a chance at winning the Cup. Then moving forward, we have a now 33-year-old JT Miller still making $8 million. And if we don't make the playoffs, I think our window's over. And it's almost time to rebuild. So it's like the contract is just so big for me that it's risky. This is a very high risk, high reward trade. Now, I like the move. I like Drury and the fact that he went out there and he did this. And we didn't have to pay that much. I'm going to sit here and I am going to complain that we had to give up Chytil and Mancini. But you know, when you compare them, Miller is obviously so much better than both combined. And the other upside, I guess, is if we do miss the playoffs, we do still get to keep that first-round pick this year, as long as we don't have the 14th, 15th, or 16th pick. But we'll see. That's just my initial thoughts. We'll break it down even more, but I'm curious to hear your initial reaction to it.
I was like, whatever. I mean, they're trying to be – Drury's trying to be aggressive right now. I don't think the Rangers are JT Miller away from making the playoffs. You look at the expected lineup for today, and And yeah, you're adding JT Miller, but at the same time, it's like, wow, it's still bad. Still a bad lineup. With underperforming players. I mean, he had 103 points last year, 82 in 2022, 23 and 99 in 2021, 22. Like if he can get back to that, I think the Rangers are pretty well off. Like they'll have Panarin and JT Miller. I mean, you have a 100-point center. When's the last time the Rangers have had a 100-point center? And Meek almost did it in 2022, 23, but he hit 91, then fell off. I can't even think of the last 100-point center the Rangers have had.
I can't either. I've been watching this team for over a decade now, and the only 200-point players I can think of from when I've been watching are Panarin and Yager.
Yeah.
I've done that, like,
I think those are the only two.
So it's been a while.
And neither of them are centers. So it's like it has been a long time since they've had a 100-point center. But I mean, it's the top 13 protected. I think the Rangers is good for the Rangers this year. But if they plummet next year and they get the Vancouver. Oh, no, it went to Pittsburgh. So now Pittsburgh gets that first-round pick. There you go. So that makes it even worse, in my opinion, because the Canucks flipped it for Marcus Pettersson, which is wonderful. So now our division rival, who is probably entering a rebuild soon, is getting a top 13 protected first-round pick. So if the Rangers crumble next year, that pick goes to the Penguins.
I saw that Pettersson trade last night, but I didn't even look closely at the details. I was just like, oh, the Canucks have 3 Petterssons, ha ha ha. I did not realize that was our pick.
That is our pick. So they traded our pick to the Penguins. Now in a JT Miller, I've kind of stayed away from that, I guess. Like I said, or it's not a bad trade. I think, I really like Philip Chytil, and Victor Mancini played well, or he played well or decently when he was up here earlier in the season, but he's a 5th or 6th defenseman, and I feel like that's kind of expendable. Especially because they reportedly said no to Schneider. Chytil hurts. That does hurt.
We've lost 2/3 of the kid line in one season, and that's only halfway over.
That was only 3 years ago too, which is really insane. But I think there still needs to be. I think JT Miller, if they're gonna make a playoff push, I think it's a good trade for them. But there's a lot more that they do need to get done. I have no clue what he's going to look like in the lineup. Obviously, he's going to play center. I don't know who he's going to play with. I'm pretty intrigued to see that.
I mean, I would have to assume that the Rangers are going to keep Panarin, Trocheck, and Lafreniere together.
I mean, that's a given, yeah.
I think Zibanejad has to go down to the 3rd line at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And the 2nd line would be, I don't even know.
Would Kreider Smith, or would Kreider go back down with Zibanejad?
Cooley, Miller, Smith. That doesn't sound that good.
Cooley, low-key Cooley and Miller.
Cooley's good together. I don't see those 3 meshing, but I hope I'm wrong.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if JT Miller is really a defensive forward, but you got Riley. I mean, he hits hard, so maybe he forechecks hard and opens up the game to Riley Smith because he plays defense, and then Will Cooley does too. So I don't know. I have no clue. I'm just
I mean, I don't want to get too much into that either, because
I agree.
If Miller does end up playing today, then this entire conversation is going to be like, why did we waste our breath on it?
Yeah, exactly.
We're going to find out. It's recording at 10:30. The game's at 3:30. We have a couple hours to go, and
either way, this is a good. If they're going to make a playoff push, this is a good start. I guess, and then leading up to the deadline, you'll see what happens. If not, and they don't make the playoffs, then there's implications that go into the summer. That what are you going to do with Mika's contract now, because you have 2 guys making $8+ million on the roster that are 30-year-old centers, and Mika's probably not going to want to play on the 3rd line. So whatever. That's another conversation that we can have a different day. I apologize.
You know what? Just real quick, maybe when JT Miller comes in, shows Mika who's boss and takes his spot in the top 6, maybe that'll be enough for Mika to waive his trade clause and be like, whatever, I want out of here. Because we have it's like the Toy Story thing where it's like, I don't want to play with you anymore.
Oh yeah, and he drops Woody and it like goes through this whole spiral in Toy Story 2. Yeah.
Yeah,
he like goes through a whole entire spiral and he's like it falls into a depression.
That's well, I don't okay.
No, not that. Like in Toy Story, Woody goes into the depression.
I know, but I was about to say that's what I want to do to Mika, but I don't
want to go that far.
I don't want to say that I hope he gets depressed.
Yeah, I don't want to go that far.
I just want Mika to know that he didn't try his hardest and he's been bad. So we went and we got someone better than him. And now we're just going to focus all of our attention on the new, better player. And Mika can just go play in the bottom 6 with Rempe and whoever. And he just will continue to not score. But it's an upgrade. It is an upgrade. It's an expensive upgrade. I wish we could have gotten rid of a large contract for it too, such as Mika's, or at least gotten Vancouver to retain some of the $8 million that Miller makes. But at the end of the day, I can't complain too much because yes, we're upset about Chytil and we're upset about Mancini and the fact that our first round pick is in the hands of the Pittsburgh Penguins now. But we got a 100-point player. That was one of the biggest criticisms we received the last time we discussed the possibility of a Miller trade. It was about how we didn't want to give up Chytil. And everyone was coming after us, being like, you wouldn't give up Chytil, like a 40-point bottom 6 player for a 100-point player. And I said, we would. It just hurts, So, I mean,
does hurt.
Chytil was never going to be a star, but, he did what he needed to do when he was healthy, which is another problem with him is that he wasn't healthy that often. But he was a good bottom 6 player. I feel the same way about him as I did Kakko. Never the star we needed them to be, but good role players that did what they needed to do. But I still say the trade's a dub. I'm not gonna give it like an A, but I'll give it like a B, maybe a B minus. I think it's a good start. If we want to make the playoffs, this is where we need to start. Get a good center and not the Zibanejad playing our top 6 really. And then the rest of the pieces will hopefully come in the next couple of months. We need a better defenseman. We need so much needs to be done. This isn't even step 1. Trading Trouba was step 1, I guess. Then Kakko is step 2. This is like step 3. Claiming Kaliev was step 3. This is step 4. So I don't know. That pretty much wraps up the JT Miller trade breakdown. Unless did you have anything else?
Yeah, I have one more thing. I think this trade is a solid C. Yeah, 22. So they going to have a lot of cap space. I think with the cap rising, I think being able to fit this under the cap, if you're able to trade like Mika or Kreider, it works out very well. But I think this makes Mika a lot more expendable if he waives his no movement clause. Now that he's going to be on the 3rd line, so it's like if he does, you're in pretty good hands. You're getting $8.5 million off the books. So that's my final thought. I know we talked about it, but that's my final thought.
Yeah, no, it's all good. So it kind of seems like we're pretty middle of the ground on this trade. I'm very curious to know how the fans feel. I think this is going to be one of those episodes where we got a lot of comments. So whether you love the trade, whether you hate it, or whether you're kind of meh like us, let us know down in the comment section below. If you guys did enjoy, be sure to like, subscribe, ring that bell so you don't miss notification, and be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms at Fireside Rangers. Hopefully Miller plays today. I'm going to try to get this episode up as quickly as possible. So I'll see y'all later. Have a good one. And
peace. Bless your Rangers.